What's up, guys? Welcome back to True Crime Unraveled. I'm your host, Robert, and I want to give a special thanks to my guest last night, Scott on Tape. We discussed a wide variety of true crime cases, from the Idaho 4 case to Delphi to ASAP Rocky, and then some of the older true crime cases like Ed Kemper and the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper. And it was really a breath of fresh air to have a new perspective when it comes to the true crime genre. He is a pop culture tour guide. He's done true crime, and it was a very big honor for me to have him on my channel last night. And something that he said last night kind of stuck. When the Idaho 4 case is over, there's always going to be true crime. There's always going to be another topic come along in the true crime genre. Like, there could be another big case come after Idaho 4, or there could be another smaller case. Yeah, I know we all came here for the Idaho 4 and some of the other bigger cases like Delphi, but we shouldn't let one case just drive us, to the point where we're talking about the same thing over and over again. Like, I'm starting a series tonight on Ted Bundy, which he is one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. And he was 28 when he started his murders. And, last night we talked about the Zodiac, and he was more of a spree killer than a serial killer because he just stopped. And there was a lot of debate whether he was alive or dead or what happened to him. And then you had all these different suspects when it comes to the Zodiac. You had Lawrence Kane, and you had this other guy. I mean, heck, even the Golden State Killer was thrown in there as a suspect for Zodiac. And then here a few years ago, this other name surfaced, Earl Van Best. And the only reason why his name surfaced was his son said that he looked like the composite for the Zodiac. But, it just goes back to what Scott said last night. True crime is always going to be around. Yeah, it doesn't matter what case is on the forefront. Back in the early 90s, the O.J. Simpson case was the high-profile case. And then it went on to the Menendez brothers. And then it went on to Gary Ridgway. And then it went on to the Unabomber. And then it went on to BTK. And where we're at right now, we have the Brian Koberger case. What big case is going to come after the Idaho 4? We don't know. There's always going to be a new topic to discuss. Even after the Idaho 4 case is done and over with, there's going to be new cases to discuss, some cold cases, maybe some unsolved cases. But let's get into this video about Ted Bundy. He was smart, but at the same time, he seemed crazy. Or was that just an illusion he was putting on?
He was intelligent, articulate, and handsome, a young man on the fast track to success.
He looked like a young Cary Grant.
Yet during the grisly killings that spanned 5 years, Ted Bundy slaughtered more than 35 women.
From his point of view, the thing that would make for good sex is an attractive woman whom he's going to handcuff, terrorize, and make her believe that she's going to die.
Sure, I get angry. I get very, very angry and indignant. I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal. I like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not. On January 24th, 1989, at 7 a.m., before the sun rose over the state prison in Stark, Florida, plans were underway in the death house for an execution many thought would never occur. The electrocution of Ted Bundy, America's most notorious serial killer. After nearly 10 years on death row, Bundy was scheduled to die for the 1978 murder of Kimberly Leach, a 12-year-old girl. Yet he admitted to killing more than 30 others in a grisly bloodbath that took him through Washington State, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. Since his original capture in 1976, Bundy had become a media sensation. I'll plead not guilty right now. America was mesmerized by the former Boy Scout, college graduate, and law student, who as a rising young Republican was even a shining star in Washington state politics.
The Ted Bundy, before there were any accusations, any charges, any arrests or anything, I was a very nice guy. He was a friend of ours. We didn't think he was strange or different.
Once he was arrested, Bundy taunted the system. He escaped twice from Colorado prisons while awaiting.
So see that right there. He's a chameleon. He could put the mask on of an everyday ordinary person, and then when he got these lecherous cravings to kill, that mask would come off. And like they just stated, that he was a up and coming Republican. He was making waves in Washington politics. So if he could do all that and still go out and murder all these women, he is the definition of a true sociopath, not psychopath. There's a difference. Psychopaths are are off the hinges and everything else, but a sociopath can blend into normal society at any given moment.
Murder trials there. After his arrest in Florida, he showboated, acting as his own counsel while rap groupies devoured his every move.
He was like a movie star, and if he'd look around, they'd all giggle and nudge each other. And I thought, it never occurs to them that if he were free and he met them on a dark night, they're just the type of potential victim he would be looking for.
But Bundy's natural cockiness was now gone, as two guards led him to the death chamber.
Bundy seemed very resigned to his fate. Bundy seemed startled when he saw the electric chair.
Outside the jail, a crowd estimated at 500 avidly awaiting news of his demise chanted slogans like, "Burn, Bundy, burn."
They ran electricity. Burn it up. 4, 3, 2, 1.
At 7:16 a.m., an anonymous executioner pushed the button. 2,000 volts surged through Bundy's body. Within 60 seconds, one of the worst serial killers of all time was pronounced dead.
When we came out after the execution, almost a carnival atmosphere on the part of some of these people. Cheering, blowing of horns, celebration.
He had an easier death than any of his victims. Some 35 women may have fallen prey to him. Only he knew the real number, and he carried that with him to his grave. Police believe Bundy's killing spree had begun in 1974, when he was 28 years old, studying law and
And that's the same age as when Brian Koberger he got arrested for these crimes that they say he committed. Uh, I am on the fence. I'm a truth seeker. I don't want Brian to be guilty, but if something happens during the trial and they convict him, yeah, I will come up on my on panel and apologize, for saying he was innocent when clearly the evidence showed that he wasn't. But until I see that evidence, he is guilty. I mean, he is innocent. My bad. He is innocent until proven guilty. You have you have all these wild accusations running around. You know, in the cast report, it's basically a piece of paper. You have this new judge who is not only being hard on the defense, he's being hard on the prosecution. He's being by the book. And, initially we got the alibi for Brian, stating he was in the Wildlife Park the night of the murders. But we haven't heard any more about that alibi. And that makes me wonder why. And if they introduce it now, since the trial's in August, will this judge uh, block that alibi defense because this entire court timeline restarted as soon as it was moved from Latah County to Ada County. So if he introduced this alibi in Latah County, will he reintroduce it in Ada County? And if he's going to reintroduce it, why haven't they done it yet?
living adjacent to the University of Washington in Seattle.
He made a very, very positive impression. He was very verbal, articulate, intelligent. I guess I would characterize him. He looked like a young Cary Grant.
But at that time, no one could guess that this clean-cut and good-looking young man was about to begin a series of rapes, tortures, murders, and dismemberments that would shock the world. After midnight on January 4th, 1974, Ted Bundy stood outside the basement bedroom window of Joni Lenz, an 18-year-old student at the University of Washington. He entered her bedroom through a door accessible from outside, and while she slept, he savagely bludgeoned her with a crowbar. The next morning, Joni was found surrounded by a pool of blood. A bed rod had been torn away from her headboard, and in a sexual frenzy, rammed into her vagina. There was a specific reason why Bundy singled out Joni. It was a physical characteristic she shared with almost all of his victims. She wore her hair long and parted in the middle. But it would take years before the police understood why that moved Bundy to murder. Linda Ann Healy was a senior at the University of Washington, majoring in psychology. On January 31st, 1974, after Linda had gone to bed, Bundy broke into her room. He knocked her unconscious, wrapped her in bed sheets, and quietly carried Linda out of the house. Her scattered body parts and decapitated skull wouldn't be found for a year. To those who would track him, and those who would later try to understand his crimes, the question remained: how could this charming and intelligent young man commit such unspeakable crimes against people he didn't even know?
They are things. They are victims. They are not women. And I never heard him really use the term women or females or anything very often. He referred to them as things, as objects.
The other person's life doesn't have value, since he doesn't see her as a real person with real needs. And if anything, the idea that investigators and the community will be shocked and the parents will suffer just makes it all the more exciting, because he's getting even.
Yet somehow Bundy, like other serial killers, was able to keep the murderous rage hidden inside of him secret. To his friends, family, and colleagues, he seemed very well adjusted.
Nice person. And he was a person that we socialized with, and we knew a little bit professionally. I thought was really an up-and-comer, somebody who was going to do well in life.
One of the very important aspects of the facade that he built was one of great sincerity. He literally oozed sincerity.
Yet appearances can deceive, and Ted Bundy was a master of deception.
Little did I realize, of course, at the time that was a carefully crafted social veneer that he had laboriously developed and used in his interactions. I never saw any aspects of the monster that lurked behind that mask.
But by 1974, the monster who lived behind the mask had been there for a long time. Perhaps since Ted's earliest childhood.
I have always felt that beneath the veneer of a normal childhood was some great hostility toward someone, probably his mother.
Police believe that in 1974, Ted Bundy embarked upon a series of grisly murders that began in Seattle, Washington, and over a period of 5 years.
Now, what is it with serial killers and their mothers? There's a horrifying backstory. There has to be. Serial killers view their victims as their mothers because they had some type of traumatic trauma from when they were children and their moms. That's what makes a serial killer tick is they have bad memories of their moms and they take it out on unsuspecting and innocent women.
Spread through Oregon, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, and Florida. His rampage took the lives of at least 35 young women. When he was arrested in 1976, one of those most steadfast in his defense was his mother, Louise Bundy. She would continue believing in her son until his execution in 1989.
My Christian upbringing tells me that to take another's life under any circumstances is wrong. And I don't believe the state of Florida is above the laws of God.
Louise is. She was in denial until the night before Ted was executed when he told her the truth.
Many experts believe the seeds of Bundy's rage were planted in his childhood. He was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24th, 1946.
Okay, so his birth name wasn't Bundy. It was Theodore Robert Cowell. So how did he get the last name Bundy? Was it just like a pseudonym? A name that he just picked? That's what I would like to know. Maybe they will explain that in this video.
In Burlington, Vermont. His mother, whose maiden name was Eleanor Louise Cowell, was a prim, modest department store clerk who had come to Vermont from her home in Philadelphia to give birth to her child, a child born out of wedlock.
Ted was born illegitimate. He was born in a home for unwed mothers. His mother, I think, was about 23 then.
Soon after his birth, Eleanor took Ted back to Philadelphia. It was the beginning of a tragic charade. As he grew, Ted was told that his grandparents were his mother and father, and that Eleanor was his older sister. From an early age, Ted sensed he was living a lie. And there were other problems at home. Eleanor's mother had a history of clinical depression, suffered panic attacks, and was eventually treated with electroshock therapy. Her father, Samuel Cowell, was known to be an extremely violent and frightening individual.
Sam Cowell was evidently a man with maniacal temper who read pornography, who tossed his daughters down the stairs if they slept too late.
As he grew into a young man, the confusion over his relationship with his mother would weigh on Ted. Even at the age of 3, there were signs that he was not a well-adjusted child.
His teenage aunt was taking a nap, and she woke up to see that he had taken all the knives out of the kitchen drawer and had arranged them around her body with blades pointing toward her.
His mother, concerned with this behavior and trying to escape the control of her father, moved with Ted to live near her Uncle Jack Cowell and his family in Tacoma, Washington. In later years, Ted said that it was devastating for him to leave Sam, the man he thought of as his father. In Tacoma, Eleanor went by her middle name Louise and worked as a secretary at the Council of Churches. One evening, she met a hospital cook named John Culpepper Bundy. Louise married him a year later, and her son finally had the name he would carry through life, Theodore Robert Bundy. But Ted was never close to John.
He had a lot of conflict with his stepfather, looked down upon his stepfather because his stepfather didn't have a high enough station in life.
Despite his new name, Ted still considered himself a Cowell and was drawn to his great uncle Jack, a cultured music professor at the University of Puget Sound in Washington. Ted wanted to be just like him.
It was very, very important for him to be someone special, to be recognized in some way.
Over the next 10 years, John and Louise added 2 brothers and 2 sisters to the Bundy family. But Ted had little to do with them or their father.
He had a Boy Scout troop, but Ted would never go camping. He just seemed to remove himself from any connection to his stepfather.
And if there was no connection at home, there was even less at school. His junior and high school friends described Ted as very shy. He suffered from stuttering, and he did not date at all.
He really didn't date unless it was a Sadie Hawkins dance where the girls asked him.
But there was a secret side to Ted Bundy that was already emerging. He considered himself above the law. By the time he was 15, he had become an expert shoplifter and was a suspect in 2 burglaries.
Grandiose narcissism, the ability to outwit the police, the ability to flaunt authority, the ability to shoplift. All of these things helped confer on him this sort of narcissistic sense of specialness and entitlement.
His relationship with women also changed for the worse. He became a peeping Tom, sneaking through the night to peer into the windows of young girls. More significantly, there have always been suspicions that at the age of 15, Ted Bundy became a killer.
Ted carried the morning newspaper when he was 15. Along his route, there was a young girl named Anne Marie Burr. Anne Marie was 8.
Ted knew Anne Marie. She took piano lessons from his great uncle Jack. On August 31st, 1961, Anne Marie's parents found her missing from her bedroom.
The window was open a little bit, and it was in the days when you had a TV cable on the roof and you had to get under the window, so they couldn't lock it. The front door was ajar. She was gone.
A search that at one time involved 800 soldiers, lawmen, and volunteers found nothing. At the time, no one suspected that Ted may have been responsible for Anne Marie's death.
In my mind, she was Ted's victim.
And there would be many more.
That's just sad that he could possibly have killed an 8-year-old child at the age of 15. Like they were stating, he was developing a very narcissistic attitude, and he resented his stepfather uh, which I'd like to know why. This man, gave him his last name, Bundy, and it was like he was just like pulling back and detaching from everything. Detaching from his stepdad, from his mom, from his siblings. He views, and I believe he viewed these women that he murdered as a way to detach from reality. I was watching. It was an older episode of Ghost Adventures, and they were actually at one of his homes in Utah. I believe it was Utah, and it wasn't very far from where this girl was abducted by Ted Bundy, and they found in the home. Yeah, it was. Yeah, naturally, it was Ghost Adventures. So the home that he lived in was possessed by demons. So yeah, so he clearly was a devil worshiper, and but he didn't take it to the extremes like Scott and I talked last night about the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, and Scott stated that he didn't believe that Richard Ramirez was a devil worshiper. He just tried to be like a big scary guy, and I agree with Scott. Richard Ramirez, when he found out he was wanted, because he saw his picture on the front of this newspaper in a shop in I believe it was Little Mexico, and he took off running like a scared little bitch.
In the mid 1960s, Ted Bundy was a student at Woodrow Wilson High School in Tacoma, Washington. Even though he was smart, good-looking, and friendly, he was awkward with his fellow students, especially the girls.
There seemed to be a real defect in this whole notion of how do you build a close, intimate relationship, and some confusion about that. The arena in which he seemed to feel secure was the school, the classroom, where he could use his verbal skills, and that's where he tried to manage teachers' impressions.
He graduated from high school in 1965 with a B average. The next year, he entered the University of Puget Sound, but on the huge campus, he felt anonymous and lost.
Inside, Ted was very empty and very inadequate, but he could put on the facade of a very sophisticated, educated young man.
In 1967, as part of the facade, Ted
Said he put on the facade of a young man, and that's just the mentality of a sociopath. You can put on the facade that and everything else, but and it can also when they become like Ted Bundy, it's a serial killer. He can take that mask off of a normal everyday individual and become what he truly is, which is a monster. And then once his deed is done, he can put the mask of normality back on.
University of Washington, where he studied Chinese. He also began fabricating a new personality. If the old Ted was shy and withdrawn, the new Ted would be witty, cool, and self-assured. His deception was about to pay off. At the university, Ted met Stephanie Brooks. He was particularly attracted to her beautiful shoulder-length hair, which she wore parted in the middle. She was wealthy, sophisticated, and worldly. Everything Ted wished he was.
He said, she's perfect, she's beautiful, she's wealthy. And I think to the degree he was capable, he was in love with her.
They stayed together for a year. For the first time, Ted experienced an intimate sexual relationship with a woman. He was in love with her. But to Stephanie, they were merely college sweethearts. She saw no future in the relationship. She thought Ted was immature. Ted had become obsessed with her, but Stephanie told Ted their romance was over.
She told him that he wasn't going anywhere, that he had no ambition, he wasn't organized, he couldn't make plans.
Ted was devastated. With his world unraveling, he dropped out of school and decided to visit his relatives back in Philadelphia. His visit had a purpose. He had to answer the question that had always bothered him. Who was he? After checking records in Philadelphia, he traveled to Burlington, Vermont. There in City Hall, he learned something he had always suspected.
He discovered that his mother was actually the woman who had been passing as his sister his whole life. And that has got to rock the world of anybody to find that their roots are not what they thought.
There was a great deal of turmoil around his own self-identity, who he was. By all accounts, when he found out that he was an illegitimate child, it was devastating.
This man was badly betrayed by a woman, his mother, and learned of that betrayal at the very period when he's still reeling from the rejection by his girlfriend, his first love.
Many who have studied Ted Bundy feel it was now that he decided to take revenge on the women he felt had destroyed his life. With an icy resolve, he returned to the University of Washington, took a room nearby, and began studying psychology. He excelled in all his classes and seemed rejuvenated with a new purpose. And whatever demons raged inside of him, Ted Bundy kept them well hidden.
Many people like him have an ability to create compartments in their lives. And this entity, this demon, this depraved monster lived in one of those compartments.
As far as anyone knew, Ted's life seemed to be changing for the better. In 1969, he met Elizabeth Kendall, a young divorcee. They began a friendship and then a romance.
Very smart, shy young woman. She came up here from Utah. They met in a tavern. She loved it. She loved him unabashedly.
His relationship with Elizabeth seemed to work wonders for him, but underneath, he was seething and plotting revenge.
If you really have a very negative core in yourself, there's this kind of envy, a need to destroy the beauty in others.
And the first one on his list was Stephanie Brooks. He was secretly still talking to Stephanie, hoping to make her fall in love with him again, in order to hurt her, just as she had scarred him. To enhance his image, he became active in local politics, working on the governor's re-election campaign.
I thought he was very, very smart, good at politics. He was good at what he did. He was friendly.
In 1971, at the age of 25, Bundy was working in his spare time at the Seattle Crisis Center, manning the suicide hotline phones. Beside him worked soon-to-be author Ann Rule.
He was kind. He was very good on the phone. And ironically, we saved lives together. Now, at that point, if anybody had told me there was anything underneath this perfect surface, I would have said you're crazy. Because we were locked up all alone together in a 4-story Victorian mansion that looked like nothing so much as the house in Psycho. But I felt safe locked with Ted Bundy.
72, Ted's first real girlfriend still inhabited his thoughts and his plans. On a business trip to San Francisco, he met her. The new Ted Bundy swept her off her feet.
And she fell madly in love with him and agreed to marry him. As soon as she agreed to marry him, he dumped her.
2 days later, on January 4th, 1974, Ted Bundy began a 5-year rampage of killing that would horrify the nation. Most of his 35 victims had one thing in common.
His ideal victim was a small framed female, long hair, part in the middle, style of person. Usually pretty good looking.
They all resembled Stephanie Brooks.
So his ex Stephanie is the reason why he started murdering all these women. All because, she hurt him badly. Said that he wasn't going to amount to anything. But that wouldn't lead. If a woman had told me that, I would just chalk it up, try to better myself, and move on. But not Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy used that as fuel to feed the monster that was growing inside of him. Till, like they just said, one day the monster came out, and for 5 straight years, he started killing women that looked like his ex and had their hair parted down the middle. That just seems kind of ironic and odd to me that you would target females strictly because they had a part in the middle of their hair. But then again, we're not talking about an ordinary person. We're talking about Ted Bundy, one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, who died in the Florida electric chair. Now, I'm not sure if Florida still has the electric chair. I think they went to lethal injection. I could be wrong. The electric chair could be one of their defaults in case they don't get the chemicals for lethal injection. I mean, look at Idaho. Idaho is having as default the firing squad. So, what's going to happen with Texas if they can't get the drugs for the lethal injection? Are they going to go back to their default, which is hanging? Now, here in the state of Kansas, we had the death penalty for a long time, and it was at first it was hanging, and then it went to lethal injection, and then they put a pause on the death penalty here because they thought it was cruel and unusual punishment. And in a couple of the states, I believe Florida is one of them, the death penalty under statute is listed as murder. So what they do is after somebody's executed, that person's body goes to the medical examiner and autopsy. And why is it autopsied? Is because it's technically murder, and in a murder investigation, you always autopsy the body, and that's how they view the death penalty is murder. Murder carried about by the respective state where you live at. See, a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know that it's technically the state or the government. Let's say the government of the United States is actually murdering somebody, because that person had committed a crime against the state. So the state takes their life.
On January 4th, 1974, just days after severing his relationship with Stephanie Brooks, Ted Bundy began his reign of terror. Over the next 6 months, 8 women disappeared from college campuses in Washington, Oregon, and Utah.
I think he was looking for victims 24 hours a day. There were people that he specifically was scoping out, acting like a predator towards. And then there were those that were just happened to be at the right place at the right time for him.
His first 2 victims were students at the University of Washington.
People like to believe that it was someone from outside. There must be some depraved killer out there in the community who was coming to the campus. Little did we know that the killer was one of us.
Even his girlfriend, Elizabeth Kendall, had no idea who Ted really was. From February through June 1st, Carol Valenzuela, Nancy Wilcox, Donna Manson, Susan Rancourt, Brenda Ball, and Roberta Parks all vanished.
Nobody had connected any of these cases together. Different police jurisdictions, different states.
This was a terrible mystery. I mean, how could these girls suddenly just disappear? One little girl was walking like 30 feet from the back of her sorority to another sorority, and boom, she's gone. How could this happen?
Her name was George Jan Hawkins. Years later, after his capture, Bundy divulged the perverse methods he used to stalk and capture so many of his victims. He preyed on their kindness by pretending to be injured.
The girls he picked were all helping kinds of people. Here's this guy on crutches, often limping along, dropping his books, and he would ask young women, "Could you help me get these to my car?"
That was the ruse he used on Georgianne Hawkins. As she bent over to put his books into his car, Bundy grabbed a tire iron he had hidden. He hit her over the head and pushed her into the car.
He would secure their hands in some fashion, either with handcuffs, strips of sheet, or leather. His seat was missing, so they could lay down in there and no one would ever see him.
Bundy usually drove his victims into the deep woods surrounding Seattle. If they survived his attack with the crowbar, he would sexually assault them.
From his point of view, the thing that would make for good sex is an attractive woman whom he's going to handcuff, terrorize, and make her believe that she's going to die.
Later, on death row, he was asked what it was like to murder someone.
And he answered, murder is not about lust and it's not about violence, it's about possession. When you feel the last breath of life coming out of the woman, you look into her eyes. At that point, it's being God.
After he was through, he would discard them deep in the forest, but he would return later.
He was going back over and over and over again to crime scenes. Not to just destroy evidence, but to do things with those bodies. We suspected he took a whole body because we had one victim that was totally made up with stuff that she ever wore.
Bundy's use of makeup is simply to make a victim more attractive. But apparently he didn't require it. He went back to decomposed corpses and still had sex with them.
To the psychiatric experts who studied
Oh, that's just gross. You mean you're telling me that this guy went back and had, you know what, with a decomposing body? Wow. That's just sick, wrong, and absolutely, utterly disgusting. But we're not dealing with a normal man here, guys. We're dealing with Bundy. And yet, I know there's a lot of people out there that idolize this guy. And I'm not talking about normal, everyday, sane people. I'm talking about, about people who have a weird obsession with serial killers and they idolize him. There was actually something going around for a while in the Brian Koberger case that he idolized Ted Bundy, and I ain't never seen anything like that, or anything written on paper, or anything of validity for that to be even remotely true. Even though he was an avid hiker and runner, and he did go to Wawa Park because there was a rumor that's where Ted Bundy would go. But like I'll say again, that was just rumor. We have no evidence to corroborate that Ted Bundy ever went to Wawa Park. So it just makes you wonder, where all these rumors and speculation come from. When it comes to the Idaho 4 case, or when it comes to any case, even the Bundy case, why would somebody say that he went to Wawa Park? I mean, he could have went. I do not know, but there's nothing backing that up that he went there.
Bundy was unique, straddling two different categories of serial killers.
He is both a sexually sadistic serial killer. He's also a necrophilia serial killer. Common characteristics are perversion, lack of conscience, and a willingness to sacrifice others' lives for one's own sexual pleasure. There's not a lot more to it than that.
After at least 8 murders, Ted Bundy was becoming an expert at killing. In July of 1974, his addiction led him to take 2 women in one day.
A beautiful Sunday afternoon. It was 90 degrees in Seattle, and we don't get that many 90-degree days. Everybody was out Lake Sammamish State Park.
One of those was Janice Ott. She was lying on the beach when Ted approached her. He had his arm in a sling. He asked if she could help him tie his boat to his car.
When she got up to go with him, she stuck out her hand like she was going to shake hands, and she said, "Hi, I'm Jan," and he said, "Oh, I'm Ted."
Janice walked away with Ted and was never seen alive again. An hour later, Ted was back at the park.
There were at least 4 to 5 other women who were approached between, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 4:30.
But something about Bundy must have put them off. Denise Naslund wasn't as lucky. At about 5 p.m., she walked to the restroom at the lake.
She was there with her boyfriend, her dog, and the couple. She left with the dog to go to the bathroom. The dog came back, but she didn't.
After the disappearance of Ott and Naslund, witnesses who had met with the mysterious Ted at Lake Sammamish that afternoon came forward. A composite sketch of the man was circulated. The police received 3,500 tips and compiled a list of potential suspects named Ted. Bundy's name was among them.
The name Ted was brought up. I never made the connect at all. You only met the monster through his acts.
Between 1973 and 1974, the monster had been working for the King County Law and Justice Planning Office, where he was preparing a study on rapists and their victims. He was also secretly studying the procedures the police were using to try and catch him. By October 1974, 5 more bodies had been found, but most of them had decomposed or were just scattered bones. Bundy had left no clues, and he was long gone. 2 months earlier, he had been accepted to the Utah University School of law, but he could not stop himself from killing.
Ted Bundy that we knew was not a murderer, but maybe an hour later he was. That's the awful part.
Though his outward mask still projected charm and sincerity, the killer underneath it was about to be revealed. Bundy would soon be identified when one of his victims escaped. By early November 1974, Ted Bundy had murdered at least 11 women in Washington and Oregon, and 2 more in Utah, where he was now living. At the same time, he was studying law at Utah University.
Probably could have easily become a lawyer if he hadn't been consumed with murder 24 hours a day.
The thing is, with serial killers, they are addicted to murder. Like any other addiction. People may try it for a high, but you need more and more of the substance, and the substance is murder.
But Bundy was about to make his first mistake. On November 8th, posing as an off-duty policeman, he tried to abduct 19-year-old Carol Durange from a shopping center. He told her someone had broken into her car and offered to help, but inside his car he tried to handcuff her. Carol fought back, and with the handcuff still on her wrists, was able to jump out of the car and escape.
Here we have a living victim that's able to describe her abductor, describe the car, and also provide evidence with the handcuff that was still on her wrist.
But the police still had no idea who her attacker could be, and Bundy was a master of disguise.
He just looked different all the time. One time he'd have a beard, one time he'd have long stringy hair, one time he'd have a short haircut, and I think it varied with what he was doing at the time.
As 1975
That's what I'm talking about. It's the chameleon. He can change his looks, whenever he wants. It's the mask of normality. It truly is. It's the mask of normality. And all good sociopaths have that little switch in their brains that they could flip and go from normal person to a raving killer. And it's just the yeah, the origins of a madman, basically. And see, that's what a lot of serial killers are, is underneath the facade of normality is a raving madman, a monster, or like what my mom told me when I was a little kid and BTK first started in my hometown. There's a boogeyman. She told me there was a boogeyman running around. So I mean, it doesn't matter if it's BTK. It doesn't matter if it's Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgway. Uh, a lot of the high profile serial killers. They're all sociopaths that can put the mask on of being a normal person. And underneath that mask is the raving madman, the monster, the boogeyman. Like always, guys, while you're here, go ahead. If you like this video, hit the like button. Once you hit the subscribe button on your way out, you guys have a very good Tuesday night and coming up Wednesday morning. And me and Scott hopefully will have a follow up that we're going to be doing here the next couple of weeks. And you guys have a good night. Have a safe night. And just remember what I said, guys. Yeah, true crime will always be around. The true crime niche, the true crime genre, the true crime community. Yeah, it doesn't matter what case it is. Starting back with the OJ case, which was a high profile case back in the mid '90s. Then, of course, you had, the Menendez brothers, and then the Unabomber case, and we're having now it's the Idaho 4 case. There will always be a topic of true crime to discuss, even after these cases are done and over with. Yeah, there's always the next big thing coming after after a high profile case. There's always the next big high profile case right around the corner. But you guys have a good night, and this is True Crime Unraveled. Peace out, guys.